159. All right.
He's setting up the stream right now.
Okay. He's good to go. All right, everybody. Welcome to Dino Dig Live 2024. Live from the field, we'll be talking to Dr. Jen, who is somewhere in the middle of nowhere, desert. So happy to have all your questions for Dr. Jen to see what it's like to be out in the field. So if anybody has any questions, if you're down here on the first floor with me, you can come up to the microphone and ask your question directly. If you're on one of the other floors, I think there's a microphone somewhere going around, and you can wave someone down and ask your question to Dr. Jen there. So, hello, Dr. Jen. How are you? Looks like it's a beautiful day there. Can you tell us where you're at?
Hi, Eric. Hi, everybody back in Raleigh. Yes, finally sunny. We are in the middle of nowhere of central Utah, hoping that for once it will not rain on us. It's actually been quite wet out here, so everything's trying to dry out, including our fossils. Luckily, we've been tarping. But despite the wet weather, our spirits are still high. So here's hoping that we have a glorious blue, sunny sky for at least the rest of the day to help dry everything out.
All right. Well, wonderful. Yeah, we wish you all a warm, sunny day for the rest of the day. Can you tell us why you're in Utah right now? Okay, so again, we're in central Utah. We're in a formation, or actually a member of a formation, so a package of rocks called the Mustn't Touch It member. It is right at a time period in the early to late Cretaceous where we're getting huge flux of temperature. So it's getting really, really hot. So a very interesting area to look at how organisms are dealing with all of a sudden a huge rise in temperature. We're also in a cool time period where we're starting to get all your characters that you think of when you think of Cretaceous North America, like your tyrannosaurs and your ceratopsians. We're just starting to get all those characters coming over from Asia. So we're getting that first wave that's going to kind of set the stage for what we're going to be finding all the way up through the end of the dinosaur period. So it's a very interesting time for both how organisms are adapting to changing temperature, but also how different faunas are coming over to different areas. Very cool, very cool. So you started talking about the various animals that we are finding that are coming over from Asia during this time. Can you tell us, have you found any of those animals, and are you actively digging up any fossils from any of these creatures you just mentioned?
So our main player this year is a dinosaur called Eolambia, kind of your hadrosaurs, your duck-billed dinosaur kind of guys. And we've actually got two different quarries that we're working on with those, and they're very interesting in that one seems to have a very, very small individual, and one seems to have a very, very large individual. And that's exciting because it's great to have a diversity of a single genus and species. Then we can start looking at things like how fast are they growing, how they change as they grow, if there's variation within that one species. So we're excited that we're getting both ends of the spectrum, because usually you just get the middle, and hopefully we'll find more within that spectrum of very young and very old, so we can get this nice picture of a life history of Eolambia.
Very cool. So you're finding these things. Are they just laying out on the surface, or you actually have to you got to dig a hole? What's the process of getting these fossils out of the ground, and how do you find them?
A little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. When we're first looking for fossils, it is just kind of like going to the beach and beachcombing. You're walking around these outcrops, these exposures of rocks, and you're looking for bone weathering out. If it's at the bottom of the hill, you might look up the hill to see where it's coming out, or it might be coming out of the side of a hill. That's an indicator something's there. Once you see it poking out, then you start the digging. Your hope is that as you're digging, you're finding more and more of it. Sometimes you just find a little bit, that's it. Other times, in which case these two quarries, you keep going and there's more and more and more. So it's so much that you actually can't get it done in one season, and you have to keep going back, This year, the quarry that we're finding, the smaller individual, is one that we've been working for a couple of years now. We actually extended the wall, so we had to push back into the side of the rock, and we're still finding more and more fossils. So whenever someone says, "Are you still finding things?" Yes, and even sometimes within the same little area.
All right, great. So these fossils you're finding, what happens to them? Do they stay in Utah? Where do they go once you guys are done with them?
So question, so we are on BLM land, which is federal land. We apply for permits to go out and dig up the fossils, but then all the fossils that we're digging up here in Utah are going back to North Carolina. We just drive them out in big old trucks in a trailer, old school style. They come back, and then you'll see us prepping them, mostly up in our 3rd floor research lab. That's where a lot of the smaller fossils are prepped. They'll get all prepared, ready for their afterlife in our museum, and that could be, for research, it could be for education, it could be for both, but they'll have a very busy afterlife, we hope, staying at our museum collections for researchers around the world really to come and look at, so we learn more about this area and this time period.
Very, very cool. So if anyone has any questions they would like to ask Dr. Jen, just let me know, and you can, if anyone down here on the 1st floor has a question, you can come up to the microphone and ask yourself. Anybody on any of the other floors can ask their questions as well. But if there's no questions right now, we got a question here. Please come up.
Hi. How are the individuals chosen to, how are you chosen to be able to go to this dig site? What kind of qualifications do you have to have, and how are you chosen?
Okay, so you're not really chosen. When you're working with federal land, you're applying for permitting. So it's kind of like applying for a grant. And you have to have a good justification to them, why you want to go to those areas. Again, just like a grant, show all the different research you're doing, all the different resources you can throw to make sure that this is going to be a properly run dig. And then a big thing is that your museum has to be a federal repository. That means that you have been checked off by the federal government that your museum can be a repository for fossils that are found on federal land. So really, we are just the caretakers for these fossils. And that's why, anybody in the US can come in and look at them as a researcher and study them. But that's kind of the process. So it's not, a bingo or a lottery. It's applying for the permit, they go through your permit, make sure that you're a good group, you show that you're going to really put the time and the effort, and also that you're going to be very respectful. When we're out here on federal land, this is also wildlife habitat. So we're not going to just do like a strip mining thing, we're just digging a whole bunch of big holes. So all those quarries that we dig every year, we then have to cover up and try to make it look as natural as possible, because we really don't want to disrupt the ecosystem. They're just as important. We don't want to sacrifice the modern ecosystem to look at the extinct ecosystem.
All right, very good. Any questions from anybody on the 2nd floor? We got Eric here with a microphone. If anybody has a question for Dr. Jen, feel free. But otherwise, so talking about these permits that we have to get, so I guess saying that not just anybody can go out and look for these fossils, huh?
That's absolutely correct. It actually would be a federal offense to do so. So please don't do that, everybody. Whenever you're looking for fossils, it's always good to make sure that you're allowed to be on that land. So even if you are looking for fossils in North Carolina, just a good idea to make sure that you have permission from whoever is owning that land, whether it be state, private, or federal, to make sure that you're doing right. And after this field season, just to let everyone know, we have to then report all the fossils that we got to the BLM so they can keep a record of what we're actually collecting. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes into digging up dinosaurs that I don't think a lot of people realize.
All right, very good. Okay, so, that landscape behind you there looks, well, you just said you've had a bunch of rain, but overall it looks pretty desert-like. Is this what it looked like back in the Cretaceous when these dinosaurs were roaming around?
Absolutely not. So the rain, yes. But back when the Must and Touch It was a living, breathing environment, we're going to be a lot more like Raleigh. We're going to be really hot and humid. Again, this is when we're getting really, really warm temperatures in Cretaceous, but it's almost actually going to be more like Florida. You're going to get a little bit of kind of beach influence, but really, really hot, really, really humid. Probably lots of cool like crocodilians and things going around here. But honestly, this area, we're trying to look at it more and more because we want to know the overall ecosystem. We know we got dinosaurs and we've got a little bit of evidence for other critters, but we'd really like to flesh out so I could tell you, oh, it's not just a human environment, it's full of all these different characters.
Anybody on the second floor? Got a question for Dr. Jen? Question? Anybody up here? No questions, I guess.
Okay, all right. Well, then you and I will just keep having a conversation, Jen. Oh, we got a question back here. All right.
I mean, here we go.
Come up front, ask your question.
So when you put the cast on the bones and it rains, does the cast come off and kind of destroy the bone?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, we don't want those bones to be destroyed at all. So what we do is at the end of each day, even if we don't think it's going to rain, we have big tarps and we cover the whole site. So we are more concerned about our fossils getting wet than we are us. We will sacrifice us getting wet to make sure those fossils stay nice and dry. And when we bring those, they're called field jackets, those casts you talked about, back to site, we will either keep them inside a large tent, inside our trailer, or under a tarp, because you're absolutely right. You don't want those jackets, which are made of plaster, to get wet. It becomes a big, soppy, soupy mess. Myself, I'm one of the people in the DD lab, so I get to prep fossils, and I can tell you that preparators do not like soupy jackets. Not fun. Nobody likes a soupy jacket. So good question. We definitely waterproof as much as possible all those fossils.
Great question. Anyone else?
We got one up here, Eric.
Okay.
How many fossils have you found?
Just this summer, from just the one quarry, and I can only say this because I just added some new numbers yesterday, we have at least 59 from that one bit. That's one quarry. We have 3 total that we have been working on. We're just working on 2 right now. And that's after about 4 weeks of digging. But you got to remember, the first week is opening up site, getting all that rock off. We had to extend, and then we had a whole bunch of rain. So you can bet that we are all excited to really start going into that wall and pulling out even more fossils.
I got another one, Eric.
Okay.
So how many dinosaurs did you actually name?
How many did I actually name?
Yeah.
My research isn't in the area where you're naming new species of dinosaur. I'm a little bit of an oddball in paleontology. I do a lot of chemistry. So I zap fossils with x-rays to see what they're made out of, see how they became a fossil, see if there's any original chemistry from when they were alive, and not just the dinosaurs. So I haven't named any dinosaurs, but I have zapped many, many, many a dinosaur with high-powered x-rays.
Very cool. So speaking of x-rays, what technologies do you get to use to find fossils or to deal with fossils besides the x-rays you talked about?
Okay, when we're out in the field, mostly it's our eyeballs to find the fossils. You can use a blacklight. There have been various folks who are lucky with blacklights that the fossils will fluoresce under the blacklight, so a little bit of night prospecting, looking for fossils. Back in the lab, we also will use laser stimulated fluorescence, which is again kind of like using a blacklight to look for soft tissues. Our lab also does a bunch of isotope data to look at things like diet, using surface scans all the way from the micro to the large, so that we can put these scans into computers to look for patterns and textures, to do biomechanical studies, to compare a whole bunch of fossils all together to see if there's any statistical differences. We do a lot of CT scanning, so
lots of series of x-rays of a fossil so we can get a 3D x-ray and see inside of it. And we can do, again, everything from really, really big to the really, really small and get some of those fine details. We do histology, which is cutting the fossil real thin and polishing it so we can shine light through it and look at it under a microscope. So you can use that for bone, for shell, all kinds of different fossils. We do a lot of geology. So looking at the rocks that are around, trying to figure out, again, how were these environments, how did the fossils get buried, taphonomy, so what happened to the animal after it died, mapping it out. When we're out on site, we actually do a lot of mapping so that you can see how these bones are laid out and try to figure out, again, what happened to them after they died. And that's just a small bit. So the cool thing about paleontology is we're pretty much MacGyvers. We try everything because we want to try to get as much information as we possibly can from these fossils to learn as much as we can about these organisms.
Very great, very great. Any other questions for Dr. Jen? Any questions on the YouTube? None? Okay, all right. So are you out there by yourself, Jen, or do you have a team of people out there with you? How many people you have out there with you?
Right now, we are a small team of 5, which is one reason why we're only working 2 quarries, but we are small but mighty. We have a couple of grad students and a preparator and a great volunteer out here with us. And you can only really do this with the team. One, for safety, you don't want to be stuck out here all by yourself in case something should happen. But also, you've got, lots and lots of things to do in a short window. We're only going to be out here for another couple of weeks, so we want to try to get as much information as possible. We want to make sure that not only are we safe, but the fossils are safe, so the more hands on something, sometimes the better. Also, it makes things a little bit more fun. So for instance, we all take turns cooking, which is always a good time, and just really kind of sharing ideas about how we should go about things, because different people will see things differently. So sometimes if we're looking at a quarry, having multiple eyes on it about, okay, which way should we go? What do we think we should do with this? Same when we're putting those jackets, those caps on those fossils, what's the best way to go around that? So fieldwork's a lot of fun as far as, no matter how many times you come out here, you'll always learn something new, because again, you have all these different people from different backgrounds who are going to bring a different perspective.
That's great. So you mentioned food. So what do you guys eating MREs? You eating cans of beans? You said you take turns cooking, so what are y'all cooking?
Oh, we eat well out here. It's amazing how good you can come up with different food ideas when you're in the middle of nowhere and all your food has to be kept in coolers. So we jokingly call it compromise kitchen, because you're just, okay, I got chicken and some broccoli and a lemon. What can I make? And you all throw it together. So we actually have some propane grills that we can cook on. This morning we actually had some breakfast fried rice. So using up leftovers. You get really hungry out in the field because you're burning a lot of calories. So you got to make sure that you're getting enough salts and protein and everything. Once it gets close to shopping day, then maybe we get towards the beans. But otherwise, we do pretty good out here. The biggest thing is making sure you're not wasting food. No one wants to waste food. So just checking on the coolers, seeing what needs to go next. And again, it's a lot of fun and kind of a bit of team building, because everybody gets together, chopping up vegetables and everything. The other big thing is we make sure that we're not going to leave any of our food garbage around. So we do a little compost pit. We make sure that we carry in and carry out all of our trash. So we have a very efficient kitchen, I'd like to say, out here in the field.
That sounds great. Did we have a question all the way up on the 3rd floor? So following along with the question that I just asked, the question was, what do you eat?
That depends on the day. So me, specifically, first off, you got to start the morning with some camp coffee. Camp coffee is the best coffee. But when I get to the actual site, I don't tend to like to eat really heavy foods. A lot of us will bring leftovers, and you just use the sun as your microwave. I tend to go very snacky, so I throw in a whole bunch of different salty and sweet things, a couple nuts to get the protein, and I kind of graze the whole day. And that's probably why by the time I get back to site, I'm absolutely starving. But then I will say too, it does not pay to be picky in the field. You kind of get what you get and you don't get upset when it comes to food, and everyone's pretty darn good about that. Now, if you do have, of course, an actual food allergy or intolerance, we could of course adjust for that. But otherwise, you're just happy that someone put a bowl of warm food in front of you after a long day of work.
All right. Any more questions from second floor, third floor? Anybody got any questions for Dr. Jen?
Any questions on second floor? You guys got any questions for Dr. Jen?
All right, so we just had some new people come up, and the question is, where are you right now?
So right now we are in central Utah. We are in the Mustn't Touch It member of rocks, about 98 million years old, digging up some dinosaurs. But yes, we are literally in the middle of nowhere. We have to plan our grocery and our water gettings because that's about an hour away.
All right, so middle of nowhere, Utah.
Do we have a question over here? Did somebody have a question?
So I think the question is, how big is the area that you guys are working in?
The actual quarries are actually quite small. So I think a lot of people think we have these vast, like football fields of areas that we're covering. But really, it's only going to be a couple meters. So maybe the whole quarry that I've currently been working in is about maybe 20 feet long, if that. Because they're very concentrated areas of bone. The other problem is you don't want to just spread out because you have to make sure you can work the whole area. And again, remember at the end of the season, we have to cover that all back up. And that is not fun, very necessary, but not fun. So you only uncover the amount that you think you're going to be working. And when you're uncovering, you also are looking at those maps, seeing where those bones are coming from. And that's how you pick which way you're going to dig.
All right, so speaking of digging, are you guys using heavy equipment, or are you doing everything with small shovels and picks?
In the beginning, when we were expanding the quarry, there was a lot of rock that we had to go through to get to even close to the bone layer. So for there, we were using some heavy equipment like rock saws. Now that we're at the bone layer, it's all small tools. Especially the area that I'm working, there's just bone on top of bone on top of bone. So just because you see one bone all the way down here going in doesn't mean there's not another one up here. So you just go nice and slow down. And what I've actually had the problem, I don't know if it's actually a problem, but as I'm trying to take it down to uncover a fossil, I'm finding multiple more fossils. So I gotta go really, really slow, using things like awls and little picks and brushes. And then also just sweeping up our area to see if there's any really, really tiny stuff. We find really cool microfossils in this area as well that help tell us a little bit more about the ecosystem in general. So we want to go slow so we don't miss those little tiny guys.
All right, we had a question over here. Please come up.
What fossil are you currently digging out?
Did you hear that? The question
Okay, so
is,
currently we're digging.
Yeah, what fossil are you currently digging up?
We got a bunch of that Eolambia. Yesterday, I just pulled a caudal, so a tailbone, about yay big off. Because currently it looks like a limb bone going all the way in, and it just keeps on going. So I know it's a limb bone, but because I can't see all of it, I'm not quite sure which limb bone it is yet.
Very good.
Any questions on the second
questions?
floor? Questions? Anybody? Yes, sir. Stand by.
I want to know how long you've been digging at this facility and if you found anything interesting.
Good question.
So how long I've been digging, I'm actually one of the newest members of the team, so this is only my second time out in Utah. I was actually very excited to get the opportunity to dig in Utah. Most of my digging experience has kind of been more in the north, around the Montana-Wyoming border. So I think one of the most exciting things that I've found was last year I found an ankylosaur tooth, so those big armored guys, and it was like this big. So that was pretty darn exciting because that's, in general, a pretty rare creature, especially for around this area. So that was at least exciting to me.
You have a question? No. Okay. So, digging up in Eolambia, you just looking for the dinosaurs, or there are two Eolambias? That's right, a smaller one and a larger one. You just out there looking for the dinosaurs, or are we looking for other things as well?
The dinosaurs are, of course, cool, but we really want to know the ecosystem. We want to know all the players that are going around in this area. When we're digging up the larger fossils, like our Eolambia, we're also collecting the matrix, the rock around it, and we'll take it back to the lab, and we'll screen wash it to look for the micros, because we really want to see everywhere. We'll look for eggshells and teeth and maybe turtle shell fragments, all the different players. Because again, it's not really well understood what's all going on here. Who are all the different players in the Mustn't Touch It? And so it'd be really neat just to be able to show this diversity during this time period in Utah.
Very cool, very cool.
Any
other questions?
Second floor?
Oh, we got a question back here. Please come up front.
How do you know where to start digging in the first place?
Okay, good question. Let's say, just starting out, every paleontologist has a research question or a couple of research questions. So we don't just say, I want to find fossils. It's, okay, what is my research question? Where are the fossils that are going to help answer that research question? So for our lab, it's looking at this time period where you're getting this huge temperature spike. What's going on with organisms there? Okay, so if we're in United States, where are those outcrops of rock that are going to be during that time period? We're mostly interested in terrestrial ecosystems, so terrestrial ecosystems, that time period that are exposed at the surface. And then which land do we want to dig on? State, federal, private. So looking at geologic maps, seeing where those outcrops are, who we want to work with, seeing if there's any work that's been done in the area, so we get an idea of if there are fossils in that area that have been found, or if there are, maybe it's very sparse material, so we want to flesh that out. Once we're like, okay, I definitely want to dig here, then you go out and you look in that area. Once you've gotten the permission to prospect, so which is basically walking around, looking around for fossils that are poking out. When you see those fossils that are poking out, following them, seeing if they continue. If they don't, you don't have to keep digging. If they do, then you might want to do a quarry, start expanding back, seeing if you're finding more fossils. Sometimes you expand back and you find just a few. Other times, like the site that I'm currently working at, there's enough bone that you can go back year after year to keep pushing back, using those maps again to see where the bones are distributed to figure out which way you want to push your quarry.
Got another question here.
Does climate change, is climate change going to affect the field of paleontology? Like, does it affect like floods, wildfires? Does it destroy sites or anything, or is there any threat?
Good question. Definitely. We had some out here earlier, and then I had a lot of problems when I was up in Wyoming with a lot of increase in forest fires. That makes poor air quality, makes it difficult to dig, is also, we want to get out of here if we think that we're going to be blocked. If we're getting increases in storms, we can't dig when there's a lot of rain. The rock that makes up the Mustn't Touch It is rich in something called smectite, which is a clay. It swells up when it gets wet and it clogs up your boots and you just go slip sliding all over the place. So it's not fun. So if we're getting an increase in rain, it really diminishes our amount of time that we can be out digging. Depending where you are too, you can have the permafrost melting and glacials melting can uncover more fossils or it can destroy fossils. You can get flooding that can sweep through areas if you get
too much erosion during the winter, that can be bad. You want just enough that it's going to expose new stuff every year, but if you're getting really significant amount, it could be washing stuff away. And actually, speaking of climate change, that's a cool thing to tie in with what we're doing here in this area is we're looking at how ecosystems are adjusting to a spike in temperature. And maybe that could be applicable to what's happening to some critters that are experiencing that right now with climate change.
Very cool stuff. All right, Dr. Jen, a few more minutes here that we got going on. You're not eating cans of beans, you're out there cooking up some meals, you're not using too many heavy equipment. How do you get to the site? Do you get to, you have to walk in, you got a helicopter in, how you getting out to these sites?
So all of our sites we walk to. So you gotta like walking, which luckily we all do. We also have to hand carry all the fossils that we collect. Because this area is also protected for wildlife, we're not allowed to bring any wheeled vehicles off the roads that are already there. So everything has to be hand carried out. If it's a really, really large fossil and really significant, so if you go into our dueling dinosaur exhibit and you see in the one part the nice cool nest that we found out here, then we'll get a helicopter lift. We don't get helicopter lifted in, and again, it's going to be a really big fossil and a really scientifically important fossil for us to justify that. Everything else is just our muscles and our sheer will to get it out.
Any questions on the second floor? Questions for Dr. Jin? Questions about paleontology? Sorry,
Where is he?
could you,
Yeah, use that.
Where is he?
Yeah, so again, where are you? If you could just say where you're at again and what you're doing out there.
Okay, so again, I am in central Utah, literally in the middle of nowhere. Gotta drive about an hour just to get to a grocery store. And we are digging up 2 quarries right now. A dinosaur called Eolambia, which is kind of like a duckbill dinosaur. We got a very large individual and a very small individual, so we're excited that we have kind of 2 ends of the spectrum. But we're in the mustn't touch it member, about 98 million years old, trying to figure out what's going on here in this ecosystem.
All right, very good. Any other questions for Dr. Jen?
Did you say you found the dueling dinosaurs in Utah?
No. So the dueling dinosaurs are from Montana. There is a section of the exhibit space that talks all about the different tools that we use for studying fossils. And in the exhibit space, there is a nest that is from Utah. It has nothing to do with the dueling dinosaurs. It's just in the exhibit space.
All right, very good. Any more questions for Dr. Jen? All right, Dr. Jen, I think that might be it. No more questions here. We wish you good luck in the rest of your time out there. We hope that it stays dry. No more rain. So give the rest of the team our best here from the museum.
Okay, will do. Yeah, let's hope for dry weather and many more fossils.
Yes, all right. Well, if that's it, we thank you for joining us from the middle of nowhere. All right, bye.